Welcome to this segment of Protecting Wealth. In this 4-minute excerpt, Asset Sure's Tara Bramwell and pro writers Brian Thornton explore how companies initially discover that they have had a cyber incident. From data breach and ransomware to business interruption, they offer real-world examples for business leaders on recognizing the signs of a cyber attack. Let's listen in.
Hi, Brian. Thank you for joining us today. Our audience today are financial companies regulated by the SEC.
Well, thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here to talk to you today.
Let's talk about recognizing an incident. How do you define an incident, and how do companies recognize when they've had an incident?
So we'll talk about defining an incident, but what I would say is often a lot of people find out that that there is an incident, not on their own, but a third party comes to them. Sometimes it's the FBI, sometimes it's other law enforcement areas, sometimes it's credit cards and banks, where they see a pattern of fraud coming through that all involve a certain vendor at some point. And they start to put together the patterns and say, okay, clearly there's been an intrusion at this entity because they all have some sort of involvement with it, right? It could be a payment processor, it could be somebody else, right? If all of your clients as an investment professional seem to be having issues, they might come back and say, hey, they're all using this firm. And they will then launch an investigation and have you start doing forensics. And that's where you might find, hey, we had an intrusion and a lot was going on that we didn't realize. And that's the first way that they find out. You know, when it's ransomware, often it is you find out because on Saturday morning, someone can't log in and you look and everyone's locked out. If it's third-party dependent business interruption, it's one of your critical vendors goes down and maybe you can't access your files, you can't access your systems, you can't transact, you can't execute trades, you can't get emails out. So it does vary. As far as defining an incident, I would say a cyber incident can be a few things, but it is often when we're talking about data breach, it is some sort of intrusion where some third party gains access to personally identifiable information, personal healthcare information, or personal financial information. And so, that intrusion where someone gets access to that, the moment they access a file, that is when the incident occurred. You often might not find out about it until you've had an incident. Sometimes people can get into your network, but they might not necessarily access that information, where you don't have necessarily an obligation to notify, especially if that data was encrypted and they couldn't decrypt it. But that's one way where we would decide that was an actual incident. Ransomware would be an incident where you are a victim of a ransomware, you're experiencing business interruption. Those are kind of the moment that happens. That's an incident from that perspective. I think the other ones that are tougher are cybercrime, because they often start as part of a business email compromise. Sometimes that's not even a true intrusion. Sometimes it might be someone purporting to be your client saying, please go execute this trade, and you go do it. And it turns out they never said that. Or please make this investment, or please send me money. I would like to take a withdrawal, and can you send the money here? Here's the updated wiring instructions, and people don't call and verify and check. And the next thing you know, they've sent client funds out to a third party or what they thought was that individual investor or institutional investor, and it turns out it didn't go there. So those are all the moment you find out about that is really when there's been an incident. And then there's within the policies, there's first party as well as third party coverage. And so that's why it definitely depends. And sometimes one incident will trigger both coverages. Typically it does. And so, when we think about this, it's just about, making sure that the company's prepared to be able to respond quickly to all these types of scenarios.